Okay.
And I'm going to share my screen, which is the agenda, not the Word document, because it has the incorrect code on it.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Great.
Are we live? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rick. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 16th, 2021 Historic Preservation Meeting. This is a regular meeting of the Montclair Historic Preservation Commission. Notice has been given in attendance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and by sending a copy to the Montclair Times, the Star Ledger, and the Herald News. We are also being broadcast live on Channel 34, Montclair TV, and remotely live on YouTube. The meeting link, if you want to participate by phone, you would need to call 1-408-418-9388 and enter the meeting code, which is 2349-945-9162. So thank you, and we have a fairly short agenda tonight. So Janice, could you please call the roll?
I'm going to have Tommy call the roll because he's got the attendance book with him.
Okay, great. Okay, Tommy.
But first, let me officially introduce everybody to Tommy Sibilia. He's the new assistant planner, and he will be working with you all tonight and in the future. And he does have a strong background in historic preservation, so he does speak your language and understand a lot of the issues that you guys face. So I want to have everybody welcome Tommy.
Welcome, Tommy.
Welcome. Thanks, everybody. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call roll now. Ms. Bennett?
Present.
Mr. Hinman? Here. Mr. Rooney?
Here.
Mr. Greenbaum?
Here.
Ms. Kane-Levy?
Here.
Mr. Reimnitz?
It's Reimnitz. I'm here.
Excuse me, sorry about that.
That's okay.
And Mr. Graham is not in attendance.
Right, I believe he was excused.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
And is Mr. Conley here?
I am here.
Mr. Conley, our HPC consultant, is here.
And I have to leave in about 5 minutes. Sorry, I have a conflict. So if there's anything we need to discuss, I guess.
Okay.
Your beard is grown. Your beard is grown.
Yeah, just for the winter.
And we also welcome Miss Gina DeVito, who is a township attorney. Correct me, please.
Assistant Township
Attorney. And so she'll be sitting in with us tonight to guide us with any legal matters we might have. And we also have Janice Talley in attendance, who is the Assistant Secretary. Is anyone else here that we didn't identify? No. Okay. So how about the approval of minutes from November 18th, 2021 meeting? Are there any corrections, additions, amendments to that?
I have none.
Nothing here.
Okay, so hearing none, may I have a motion to accept the minutes in a second?
Motion to accept the minutes is drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
I abstain. I was not there.
Oh, okay, great. And do we have any, Tommy, are you handling the phone? Do we have any public comment?
I think there's no attendees.
You're muted, Tommy.
All right, Janice is correct. There's no attendees.
So we
Okay.
have no public.
Okay, being that there's no attendees, public comment session is now over. Committee reports.
Really?
The one, we do have a few committee reports. Minor applications met on December 2nd. We discussed 6 applications. One was for Mocha at 349 Bloomfield Avenue. The second one, which is 2021-61, was Tortoise Locan on 615 Valley Road. The third one, application 2021-62, Ride It Fitness at 50 Upper Montclair Plaza. Next one, 2021-63, the Cotter School at 51 Upper Montclair Plaza. And then application 2021-53, Boom Chia, which is at 429 Bloomfield Avenue. These were all discussed and approved for the C of A. We have a revisions committee meeting tomorrow at 2:30. There were none this past month. Moving on to community outreach, the grants, we've been working with a number of grants. The first one, we have the upcoming 2022, which is the Upper Montclair Commuter District grant, which all the paperwork has gone out, and we're about to correct the RFP. And Tommy, I think you and I are going to work on that maybe perhaps next week, because that has to be posted, I think, in January. Correct?
Yes, I will send that to you tomorrow. We just got the revisions back from the ship today.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. We had 2 grants that we finished up this year. One was the design guideline, not the design, residential design guidelines, which you all received in your packet. And we'll discuss that after the next one, which is the estate section as a historic district. There have been some technicalities involved in that. Those have been resolved, and now we have to revisit it and review it again. So that will not be up for discussion tonight. The design guidelines will be up for discussion. So
Can I ask a question for people
Sure.
who did not get a packet and are depending on digital? I cannot find those design guidelines anywhere. Where would I find them?
John, I can send them to you.
Okay.
How about can I send you a Dropbox link with the design guidelines?
Sounds great. You're going to email that to me?
I'll do it right now.
Okay, thank you.
It's pretty big.
No, not the, John, do you mean the design guidelines or the estate section guideline?
I thought you were talking about the residential guidelines.
Right, the residential historic district guidelines.
Yeah.
No, I think.
So who else is getting this digitally that needs a copy? I believe I dropped off to David, Jason, Caroline. Steve, did you get a copy of?
Yeah,
Yes,
it
you
was
got a
sent to
copy.
me. It was sent to me. In 2 packages on separate days.
Oh dear. Okay.
Give me a few minutes and I will send, tell me who want, I'm going to send a drop, because it's too big to, the design guidelines are too big to email. I'm going to do right now a Dropbox link. So let me know who wants to be.
Janice, why don't you send it to everybody? It'll be useful for everyone since you're
Yeah,
generating the link anyway.
That's a good idea.
I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
But you guys can still talk because it's going to take me a few minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss refinement of that when we discuss it under new business. Are there any other committee reports? No, I don't think so. All right. So following the agenda under old business, there is no old business. New business, application 2021-36, 205 Glen Ridge Avenue, Esquire Construction LLC. The matter has been postponed to the January meeting. And it's written on the agenda for January 27th, but we are going to change the meeting date. So that date will not be correct.
Okay.
So I just want to say I called the owner of the building to schedule an appointment to visit the interior of the building, and I have not heard back from her yet. But as soon as I do, I'll let you know, Kathleen.
Okay, great. Oh, I hope we hear from them.
Yeah, because the interior is the most important part.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
All right, you're welcome. Is there anything else? Because I need to run. I gotta.
No,
pick up
that
my
was
daughter.
it. That was it. Thanks a lot.
Before we go,
Have a-
do we want
have
to
a nice-
talk about the meeting calendar
Demolition?
just to make sure that
Oh.
the dates work for Tom?
I'll make them work. It doesn't.
Okay,
It doesn't
all right.
matter. Yeah.
So Tom,
well-
either the third or the second Thursdays would be good for you?
Yeah, I'll make them work.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Tom.
All right.
Have a
Merry
nice
Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so the next topic on under new business is a discussion of the Montclair Residential Historic Design Guidelines, which the cover is now up on the screen. John did not receive a copy, so he hasn't been able to review it. So I think what we could do, the people that were able to review it, maybe we can have a brief discussion tonight and then discuss it again in January and adopt it at the January meeting, being that everybody hasn't been able to read it.
Right.
So does anyone want to start, make a comment about what they've seen, if you've seen it?
Well, I think it looks like a good start. It looks like a good document, but then I also compared it to the Glen Ridge document that you sent. And I think that there are elements that could probably be included in this that they've included.
Oh, okay.
And I agree with you, Caroline. In fact, and I've just been too focused on other things with the HPC to really compare the two design guidelines. The Glen Ridge guidelines came out about, I guess about 3 weeks ago. I've got a copy 2 weeks ago, but I've just been too busy. But today, when I was focusing on this meeting, I was able to compare both of them, and I saw one thing in particular, which was a graph that I asked Janice to put up, if she could show. Or Tommy, can you show that? Yes, right there. So this is what is in Glen Ridge, and it's a visual to show what the steps are in terms of a application for C of A and how the different land boards interact, which I think is important. We do have that in our design guidelines, but it's not a visual. It's on page 44 of our design guidelines. And on page 44, I would like to make a change right there under demolition. Thank you. Thanks, Tommy. So there you go. So are there any other further comments that we can take away with us tonight and have this revised for next meeting rather?
Well, I do have a question about if we do try to incorporate some of the things of the Glen Ridge document, what sort of copyright is there? And
well, I think we could obviously we wouldn't use the same drawings and we wouldn't use the same graph because some of their terms are not the same as us, but there are graphs used there. There are graphs used in other preservation documents that are very similar. So I'm sure we could come up with something that just has the idea of a visual for this. And I know on page 44 under demolition, under that box, there's 2 sentences that I would like to see changed. The first sentence, which is, it's written, demolition in a historic district is subject to strict review. And especially just having the experience that we just had, I would like to say demolition of a historic structure is subject to strict review. So, and then the second sentence, the sentence after that needs to be changed a little bit. So those are the 2 comments that I see that if everyone had had a chance to really look at this, we would be able to.
Why would you say that, Kathleen? Why wouldn't anything within a historic district be subject?
Well, because you could read demolition of historic structure within a district. It needs to be a historic structure, I think.
I think, Kathleen, I agree with you. I think that that's an important element because you may have, in a historic district, you may have a structure that has no historic integrity. So really what you're trying to do is preserve the historic structures, right?
Right,
Right.
and
But isn't that, are you saying someone's determining that before it comes to
No,
the board?
that's one of the requirements for a
in the
permit.
ordinance.
Yeah, they have to, the first finding is it a historic structure? And that's, you make that finding.
And there was a question as to what the definition of a historic structure is. And I think that is something, Janice, have you pulled that up?
Well, that's already in your ordinance. You
Right.
didn't change that. That's, we spent a lot of time defining historic structure, which I don't need to read now, but it's any property in a federally, state, or locally designated historic zoning district or on a federally, state, or locally designated historic site or identified as historic or potentially historic in your master plan. So,
Okay.
I think that our definition of historic structure is broad enough to give you the protection that you want.
Can we go back to that box on page 44? Oh, yeah. Okay, so there could be a historic structure that is not in a historic district. Is that what you're
Right.
trying to say?
Right, which would be, we consider
Okay.
that a local.
Okay. I'll buy that.
And then the second sentence, which says demolition of historic structures of the zoning code, that sentence, unless you can follow it, I couldn't follow it. Where the roles of the Township Council, Planning Board, and Historic Preservation Commission are described in detail.
I think it's one sentence. It's quoting the code. So subject to strict review under section 347, 142.1, the title of which is demolition of historic structures of the zoning code.
I think this should just
Okay.
be up here.
Yeah.
It's a little unclear. It's broken up in a weird way.
Yes.
So that's okay, great. That
Yeah,
just
it
needs
was
to be
supposed
made.
to be citation. It was just kind of
Awkwardly
organized a little funny.
Yeah, it's a little editing to take care of that.
Yeah, I don't think that comma after the one should not be there. It's part of one title. And historic structure should be
Of the zoning code.
yeah.
Of the zoning code? In the zoning code?
It's
Yeah, over in.
We could also say under Montclair code section and then just take out of the zoning code.
yeah.
That makes more sense. Yes, absolutely.
That's cleaner.
Clear.
Yeah, much better. Much more exact.
So then wouldn't it then continue on where it says the roles of the Township Council, Planning Board, it should include the Zoning Board and Historic Preservation Commission are described in detail?
Yeah, the planning board doesn't get involved.
No.
And really the
Right.
council doesn't, the council's involved because they adopt the ordinance, but it should be the Board of Adjustment.
Right.
And I would say council, Historic Preservation Commission, and then put the zoning board last because they're like the last, they have the least role in this, the last resort, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the rest of the paragraph was fine.
Yep. I actually thought it was I think that the consultant actually did a very good job with the design guidelines. If we can beef it up and with what Glen Ridge has, I think that would be great. But I have to say, I think that this is a wonderful document, and I think it'll be very useful moving ahead.
Good.
So the other addition would be on page 3, the way that they've designed it, that's where the resolution, after we adopt it, yes, that's where the resolution would go.
Right.
And that's in one of the our other grants. The resolution is included.
Well, when
So-
you would, we'll insert the resolution when you, the Historic Preservation Commission, adopt this.
Right,
That resolution
Okay.
incorporated into the document to memorialize the fact that you're approving this document.
right. So then, Jason, should we move to adopt it tonight, or should we wait until next meeting?
Let's wait till the
Especially-
next meeting, because don't we want to
Review it.
those revisions on full review?
Okay, that's a good plan. Are there any other comments that we can listen to tonight before we move forward with the changes that we've already discussed?
I mean, my recommendation too is, when we meet in January, have comments or revisions written out. That way, we can adopt it subject to amendments that we can state on the record, and then,
Right.
send in an email later.
Right. Well, wouldn't we, like on page 44, wouldn't we have the consultant change that paragraph? And then we would have the copy that we would
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
adopt.
But in case there are other things too.
Okay,
Is I don't know if the consultant is, because we've already paid them. Have they agreed
Right.
to make additional changes, or is,
like we could ask
okay, because we can do it. I believe we have this in,
in Word.
or I'll have to double check, 'cause I think we can edit it. It was in a format that we can edit it.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
Okay.
that would be great.
So, I think what I'd like to do is take what you said tonight, and we'll make the changes, I think, if we can make the changes. And then I think we should post it on the Historic Preservation webpage, the
Mhm.
draft document. I know I sent everybody links via Dropbox, but we'll make the changes and then put the draft document on the webpage. Because if you guys feel comfortable moving ahead, then you don't really need a public hearing, because this is not being adopted as part of any ordinance. It's really being adopted as part of your procedures.
Okay.
Okay, and that way,
Well, didn't I read somewhere that it supersedes, it's going to become part of the master plan?
no,
Wasn't that in the
no,
introduction?
it doesn't come. The only way for it to become part of the master plan is if the planning board adopts it.
Okay,
Okay, and it's not part of the code of Montclair Township, because that gets adopted by the council, and these are guidelines. These don't get.
It's kind of like part of our bylaws in a sense.
Exactly, yes.
Janice, I have a question. We haven't reviewed this, finalized it, really had a chance to really flesh through it. Why would the authors of it presumably be done with it if we haven't had an opportunity?
David, that's an excellent question. Kathleen, do you want to give him the answer?
Well, let's just say that the deadlines weren't met. So this was, the deadlines weren't met in terms of what we had to supply to the state. So quite frankly, this was a, 6-month project, Janice, I think, that we completed in 3 weeks.
It was supposed to be a 6-month project, but for reasons beyond our control,
Right,
we submitted the RFP to the state. I don't know why it took so long for them to approve it, but we didn't get the RFP approved until July. So we
Mhm.
did the RFP in July, and the project had to be done the end of September.
Right.
Those are the constraints. I didn't feel comfortable working within those constraints myself, especially when I know Graham wasn't here, but Kathleen literally took on the burden of managing this project, editing it, working with the consultant, which I really didn't have the time, the capacity, or the ability to do. So, everybody thank Kathleen for taking on this project, and I think it's an excellent product that we've come up with. So
But shouldn't the authors of it still be responsible for any lapses or anything we identify? I mean, what, I'm not quite sure.
Well, you know what, David, there was a committee which is Steve and I worked on this. So I think at this date, unless there's something, have you read through it? Have you gone through it? Have you been able to? I dropped it off to you last week. I mean, I think it's a very good and valid guideline, and I don't think that there's anything in here that is objectionable except for that one paragraph, that one
But
text box.
that's not my issue. The issue I raise is, wouldn't the author of this, not having gotten feedback from our commission, still be available to augment, adjust, or make it, additions if necessary?
Well, as I said before, I can contact them because we do have another piece that it needs to be completed. And if everyone remembers, that was the pamphlet or the brochure, which is going to be a trifold, one piece of paper, which we had discussed. I think it's going to be a 9x14 trifold that would have some guidelines about people doing projects in their house. So that would have information and we would drop that off to hardware stores and realtors. We had the discussion. So we're still working on that because again, I have to say that with everything going on with the HPC, I really didn't have an opportunity to the past 2 weeks work with the consultant on the pamphlet. So yes, I'm still in contact with them, and I'm working with them on the pamphlet. And yes, I can ask them to make those changes in that one box. But
I think
that the document as it stands is a very good document, and I don't see why we would, unless you can write down your objections and
that's what I'm saying, is when everybody, all I'm saying is that I think we should presumably get at least one more pass after we've given them our written feedback, if it's something that needs to be augmented by them. That's all. It just seems to me odd that it's done, it's handed to us, and it's a dead document at this point.
It's not a dead document. We're talking about changing it.
No. But I'm saying that the authors themselves should still be invested in ownership of it to be available to make, if we have feedback.
ownership of this document is the HPC at this point. So when you talk about vested, it's the HPC that's vested in this document. So whatever changes you want, we'll try and make them. We'll try and get the consultant to make them. They're not going to be available to make presentations, but we'll try our best. But the state approved this document, and the state, we had to pay them for their work as of October. So those are the parameters with which we had to prepare this, and we right now have no leverage over them.
Yeah, it's a funding thing. We had to spend the money by October. It's been spent, and unless they want to volunteer their services to make the revisions, there's nothing that they're obligated to do. They don't work for free.
Right.
Yeah, that's what happens.
But this is your document, the agency. So take the time to review it and make sure that you feel comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I get the trifold, I will send that to everybody. So Janice, if you will put this or Tommy will put this on the agenda for next month as well. All right, so moving to the next, is the discussion ended? Is there any other comments on the residential historic design guidelines?
No.
No? Okay. So why don't we move on to the discussion of the total demolition ordinance that we've just had our first trial by fire last week. So I would like to publicly thank the members of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for upholding the integrity of the ordinance and also of the HPC decision.
Here.
But I do think there are a couple of things, now that I've become so closely acquainted with the demolition ordinance, and there are a couple of things that I would like to see included. And I know that we had talked about this before. In fact, I think Mr. Greenbaum also mentioned it, and that was that neighbors be notified that a structure is going to be demolished.
Okay, that would require amending the ordinance and getting the council to approve that amendment. It can certainly be done. I did look at other ordinances that require that. So that's an option for demolition ordinances.
Right.
What about the radius what is the traditional radius for a variance?
200 feet. You could not go more than 200 feet.
I think that since there's already a standard of that, I think that would be something we should ask for.
Okay.
I agree. And the other thing, and Janice, maybe you could help on this, posting a sign on the property to notify neighbors that are within a further distance that it's going to be demolished. Is that?
Yeah, that has to, because the issue has come up with variances, and site plan applications, and I believe, and I'm not an attorney, so, and I don't know if Gina is able to talk about this, but what I've been told is we cannot supersede the notice requirements in the municipal land use law, which states exactly what the notice must be, which is personal service or certified mail within 200 feet and in the paper, and you cannot exceed that and require posting on the property. So that's what I was told.
You cannot exceed that. That's interesting.
Right.
So I don't think for the demolition you cannot do that either. But again, I would have Gina take a look at that, because I'm sure she's not prepared to answer that tonight, but that's what I've been told in the past when this issue has come up with other applications.
Okay.
Can you,
I made a
are
note.
you able to do that, Ms. DeVito?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I'll take a look at that. Sure.
Okay, thank you. Only because when I've been in granted it's been in other states, but I have seen, signs posted on buildings that are to be demolished. And I think it's, the more people that know about it, I think it's best, especially for historic structures. So those
also,
are
it's
the two.
important to look at not so much the MLUL, but the UCC, since the authority for the demo permit comes under the UCC.
That's a good point, Jason. Okay, we'll take a look at that as well. One thing I wanted to talk about, just so this has been a learning curve for us as well, from an administrative point of view. I think we're going to, Tom and I have been talking about how to handle these demolition applications, and we're going to do a more thorough completeness evaluation before it even gets to you. And that's why I wanted to have, because number one, we can always deem it, we have 45 days to deem it complete. And that's what I was, when these things come in, I would send it to Tom and say, get your review in as soon as possible, because we have to deem it complete. And then we have to, this is a very strict time frame by which we have to schedule the public hearing. Otherwise, the applicant can say, you didn't meet the time frame and we are and seek an automatic approval. So to avoid that, I think we can deem it incomplete. And I wanted to go through, Tommy, the submission requirements to make sure that the submission requirements were clear. Because I know we spent a lot of time talking about finances and costs, and I don't think it's clear in the ordinance where those, I see what you've got it on the screen, not the low impact, not the findings and, no, it's up, the criteria for review.
Yeah.
That's required contents of application, isn't it?
And this might be before that as well.
It's E2.
There we go. The required complete photographic record, which they usually do. The statement of need, which they provide. And here, this is where it says C. In an instance when there is a claim of no other alternative to total demolition. And I think there almost always is a claim that there's no other alternative. They shall provide written documentation of good faith attempts to sell the building, which we talked about. But I think we spend a lot of time talking about the costs.
Right.
I think that fell under 3I, the technological feasibility of structural rehabilitation. So I
Okay,
think costs inherently factor into that because
that's the criteria. So, but I'm saying then why don't we make that, should we make that a
make it
submission?
explicit.
Well, you guys kept asking for it and they didn't provide it. So why don't we make it a submission item?
Yeah.
And that way, if they're not, because I understood your frustration. You kept asking for this information and it was never provided. And so why don't we say you have to provide it up front? And if you don't provide it, it doesn't even get to you guys until we get there. You know, we hold
Right.
kind of completeness. review.
Okay,
And what about the for sale, proof?
Well, that's in there. And obviously we didn't hold them up for that because under 2C, it says they have to provide that sales information, and clearly they didn't provide it.
they didn't provide that.
That was, from an administrator, we should never have actually could deem that complete if they didn't provide that information. So shame on us. We didn't have the procedures administratively to say, no, you're not complete. You can't proceed because you didn't have that. We're now doing that.
I also think that,
Well, I think there might be some instances where they could demolish without claiming that there's no alternative. Like if it was a structure that wasn't historic, but it was in a historic district, or like let's say it was an addition of a shed that's on a property with a historic structure, that maybe that would be a situation where they wouldn't have to provide that.
And they can request a waiver from that. And
Yeah.
then, it's just like Jason, it's like a development application.
Mhm.
Even with a completeness review, they can say, no, we can't provide that. We request a waiver. Administratively, if they're requesting a waiver, we can't hold them up. We have to send it to the board, to you guys, and you judge the reasonableness of that waiver request. So again, we're going to have a much more structured approach to administering these applications so that
Okay.
you guys get the information you need with the knowledge that, if you still think you need more information, tell them, say, we don't think we have enough information to make this decision. We need additional information, or we need to retain experts. And that's the other issue.
Oh, I have a question about that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I underlined that as I was looking through the whole document here. And it says, commission may employ, contract, and fix the compensation of experts and other staff and services that they shall deem necessary. So does that mean that, for instance, when we can hire our own expert to look at the structural viability of a building?
What you need to do is, because they're paid out of escrow. They're not paid out of your budget. See, Tom Connolly, we have a budget, and some of that budget goes to Tom Connolly to attend meetings and to do some administrative work for the Historic Preservation Commission, but most of it comes from the escrow accounts. So I think and for the most part, Tom can handle it all. And when we did this demolition of historic structures, we established a fee of $350, which is what Tom told us he needed to do his report. So that's what the escrow fee is. You want to know what the escrow fee was to have them for the Board of Adjustment to have their board engineer do the report? That was $4,000.
What's more like it?
So, number one, I think we need to take a closer look at what experts you need. If you need experts, when we need to do every year, the planning board hires a board architect, a board engineer, a traffic engineer, and a parking expert. Okay, so what kind of experts do you need to do these demolition reviews? Do you need,
I would think the biggest, consultant or the biggest expertise we need for this is a structural engineer that's independent of the people trying to tear the thing down,
Yep.
because we're not going to get a straight answer.
and when
And, and everything else we deal with, but I think if our structural engineer said, yeah, something, they're right, this is, then, he's advising us. So that's the problem I have, because I don't believe any of these structures cannot be saved.
Right.
So I want to be
I think you're right.
convinced in another way, and I don't know how that, or have that ammunition when people come and say this. They say, well, no, our structural engineer says you can do it, so we're not going to.
So it sounds as though in the application itself that we have a huge difference between $350
Yeah,
escrow to $4,000 escrow.
Well, what you need to do is issue a request for qualifications to
Mhm.
retain on an annual basis a structural engineer to provide assistance in the review of these total demolition applications. Just like the other boards retain these experts on an annual basis, so do you. And tied to that, we also have to increase the fee ordinance so that we
Right.
collect a large enough escrow fee to cover Tom's cost and the expert's cost. So
Right.
this is the perfect time to do that. And
Yeah.
we can reach out, issue the request for qualifications. We do that through the
I,
purchase.
I, th- I think that helps everyone, because when these applications come with experts from the people who want to tear these things down,
Right.
that's not, it doesn't help us make a decision, so
But
I think it helps them, helps us, helps everyone, if
You
we
may
have some sort of independent expertise, so.
may not need a structural engineer to review every demolition
Oh,
plan.
yeah, oh, yeah, of course, yeah,
So, but you
yeah.
would have the ability, and I
I,
didn't work out the details, the ability to bring them in with
right,
applications that warrant, and that's how we
right.
have to maybe craft the fee ordinance. So there's like 2 tiers.
Right.
The initial application,
I think that's a great idea, especially if the application, one of the reasons they're making is it's structurally
Yeah.
unsound. At the point they make that statement, then, okay,
exactly.
they open it to,
What about environmental?
What's that, David?
What about environmental? Is a structural engineer generally in a position to judge environmental issues?
no.
No.
No. Are you speaking about asbestos?
I'm speaking about any situation where it could be considered an environmental issue as a basis for the request for demolition.
Like the steep slopes problem.
Well, steep slopes problem, your engine, that shouldn't
It shouldn't, yeah, but
apply, and most engineers can address steep slopes.
No, but
okay.
I meant environmental in the sense of, let's say there's some kind of contamination. Let's say an oil tank leaks, and they'd have to dig up the whole foundation of the house, or in the last case of asbestos, or some other contaminant where none of us have the specific expertise to really make it the best qualified decision.
I would suggest, David, that that's something that, an expert brought by a person who's making the application is going to come with some sort of scientific breakdown of so much parts per, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and if they do, it's fraud if they're presenting. Structural, though, is something that sometimes is a little bit more judgment. Like, it's not as clear cut, where environmentally, if it's, it's poisonous to the neighborhood, and they can show, tests, that I think you have to, I don't know. I think you have
Yeah,
to accept
I
that.
think with the environmental, if it's that severe, especially when it comes to soil or groundwater contamination, they're going to have to get an LSRP, and they're technically independent.
they're basically certified by the state of New Jersey,
Yep.
not who's paying their bills.
But what about like in the case of asbestos? Are we to necessarily have the only qualified evaluator be on the payroll of the applicant? I mean, I'm not suggesting this is what I want to have done, but I'm just saying by the same basis, and I'm not saying we need to retain them, year long. I'm just saying, don't we need to have the resources when needed to
Yeah,
be
the availability.
availability?
Hmm.
Because honestly, I can't speak for asbestos contamination, I don't think any of us have that qualification other than, we have to rely upon an expert. And if an expert is representing as John had said, the applicant, their general tendency will be to favor the outcome that's most desired by the applicant. And we may need, not every situation, but may need somebody to potentially question that and counter that.
Well, wouldn't that be part of the change in the fee structure, on the demolition application itself?
But
'Cause-
what you need to do is identify the experts that you need at the beginning of the year,
Right.
and then do the solicitation for qualifications.
Right,
To
right.
make this completely transparent, you appoint them, it's all public. We have to enter into our contract just so that they have a contract with you for the year. And it's all posted and the rates that they charge are posted. So it's all above board. And then you have the ability to tap their resources when needed. But the issue is we have to make sure that the impact fee, not the impact fee, I'm sorry, the escrow fee structure is appropriate and that it is not punitive
Mm.
to
Hmm.
some applicants. You have to be a little bit careful because the numbers can really rack up.
Right.
Well, I'll leave it to you to figure out, how procedurally to do it. I just think that it's a resource that may, on certain situations, become necessary to assist us in making the most qualified decision.
Yeah,
That's all.
and I agree, and I sensed everybody's frustration with this process, and I think we can try and make it work.
Yeah, we'll get closer,
It's
we
gonna
can
take a
make
little
it
bit
better.
of time, and we're not the only towns. I hear other people, and you probably go to talk to other members of historic preservation commissions or people who are involved with this. The total demolition applications are some of the most emotional and difficult ones in the state of New Jersey.
Really,
Because
really
it's
fascinating.
personal, and you have to be so careful in how you
Hmm.
evaluate these. So I wanted to give you the tools that you need, but within reason.
So we've identified three additions that we have to put together. One is the 200-foot notification. Oh no, the sign. We're going to check on that. Mr. DeVito is going to check on that, whether or not that is appropriate or possible. And then the request for experts, which would necessitate a change in the fee schedule or the fee structure on the demolition application.
And I think we need to talk to Tom too, because Tom has a lot of experience. Maybe we need to get more deeply involved in this because he certainly seemed to know asbestos.
Right.
And Kathleen, one other thing, a requirement for the application, submitting the financial information or estimates regarding demolition,
Right.
reconstruction, or
Rebuilding.
rehabilitation. Yeah.
Oh, and one more thing I'll add, we need to be able to be, the applicant needs to agree in advance at the time of the application to provide access to the property under a circumstance, because by not giving us access or an expert to be given access, we have no means to make any evaluation.
No, that's a good point, and that's typically with development applications that's automatic, but we'll make sure that it's clear in there that they grant not you, because there might be some danger involved, but your expert access to the
Right.
interior of the structure, if it's safe.
Okay, so we've identified 5 addendums, and this we'll put together in a letter. Will Tommy work on this?
Wait,
Janice?
Kathleen,
I have
may I?
one more thing I was thinking of.
Yeah, me too.
You know, it came to our attention that if this building was to be demolished, then we would have no say in what went in its place, even though it's in a state,
Right.
it's a National Register Historic District. So I don't know if there's any way we can advocate to have that part of it. You know, we lose a building in a historic district, a contributing building, what's going to go in its place?
And I support, that's exactly what I wanted to say, is that any application for total demolition, part of the application should include, if it's legally possible, what is proposed in its place. And to what extent is it a replacement in kind, or is it, some representation that has to be considered as part of our evaluation.
Right. What do they plan to do with the
Yeah,
project?
if an application came to us, and I'm not going to say how I would think, and they said, okay, we need to tear this down, but we're going to build it back exactly how
Yeah,
it
right.
was. Okay. Well, does that affect the way we look at it?
Hmm.
It's probably a little bit different than if they say we want to tear this down and build a 6-story residential building. That's we might have a different attitude about it.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think, I'm not sure the legalities of that, so I'll defer to those with that expertise, but I think that's a mitigating factor in our decision process. It should be a mitigating factor.
Yep. Those are all good points, and I'm sure we'll work with Gina and the other attorneys working for the township to explore how these can be addressed in the ordinance.
Yeah. It's a real difficult task though, considering this is a standalone demolition permit.
Yes.
And a lot of times they're not going to invest in the architectural or site plan if they don't know to the extent they can demolish, or if they're going to be forced to retain any elements.
I guess it goes back to, Jason, the municipal land use law, which exempts 1 and 2 family houses from site plan review. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know how you marry those two, but we can certainly see if there's a way. Not saying that you guys would have review, I don't know, review of every single element of it.
It would only be if it was in a locally designated district
And
that we would get review, or if they needed a variance.
It's true.
Well, couldn't it be a suggestion? I know some of the other towns that deal with demolitions have that as a suggestion, and not necessarily giving the HPC the power to approve or what is going to be built. I mean, there has to be some mention of that in it.
So you'll offer your assistance in assisting them on building design.
Oh, I think the bottom line is we want to get a sense of intention, to the level that we can legally use the information to make a better decision, and to the extent that they are liable to be held to a standard of what representation they make at the time of the demolition application. Those are the 2 issues. One is to understand their intent, and the other is to understand to what extent they are bound by what they represent.
Can we require them to adhere to the Montclair Residential Historic Design Guidelines, perhaps?
That might be a good idea.
That's a starting point.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe make some kind of statement about the new structure relative to the structure that would be demolished, how they would compare and how they would differ, or to what extent how it would respond to the adjacent properties.
So maybe that's another question that we need researched. You know, can conditions in a demolition permit can they be binding on future building permits? Because it's a separate application.
Right.
Exactly. It would be like a tag along.
These are all excellent questions, and I don't certainly have the answer, and we'll certainly look into it. I'll help Gina to evaluate this and find the resources to answer some of your questions. And
Right.
Jason, whatever help you can provide, because I know you've got a lot of experience in this as well. Right?
Yeah, I'll certainly take a look.
Or if you could point us in a direction.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, now we have 6 additional addendums to this that we'll have to just put together in a format and discuss it.
Kathleen, can I just ask
Further
one
on.
question? One more
What's
question?
that, David?
This is related but tangential. What is the with the transition from IRA to potentially a new representative on our council, a legal counsel for our commission? Has there been any discussion about our recruitment or attraction or, you know, selection of a legal advisor to our council?
To our commission and our bylaws, I believe it states that the township attorney is the HPC attorney. Am I correct in that? I remember reading that somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that necessary? Is that critical?
It's in the ordinance, and I think it's in the MLUL too, and that's why every
Why we
town
brought it.
has it like that.
Because I was led to believe that there are attorneys that specialize in historic preservation that are retained by commissions in other communities, and I wasn't sure.
Well, that's a question, David, that we can look into and get an answer for in January.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
and I have reached out to the manager to talk about the issue of how do we handle providing legal services to the HPC. He's aware of it. I said, and I did throw out, can the HPC retain its own counsel? So it's on the table, and we don't know. We're exploring it, but because the township's in flux right now, the manager's got a lot on his table, and so does Gina. We'll take a look at it. And
Have to be patient a little bit. I have a quick little question, if I can go someplace else here. Under low impact applications expedited process, who is the historic preservation officer?
we use Tom for that.
That's Tom. He's designated as the gatekeeper for
Yeah.
that. Okay. That answers my question.
And if we did have a low impact demolition, our first one was the house on St. Luke's Place, which we dealt with this way.
Right.
You know, I was very surprised. I had sent Janice and Kathleen this demolition on Upper Mountain. And that I was very surprised to hear that Upper Mountain Avenue is not any kind of designated historic future, or if there was one street in Montclair, I would have thought
Upper
we
Mountain
had,
would be
yeah. So I was very surprised to hear that.
Is that the entire length of Upper Mountain? I would have thought a good portion of it is.
It is. A good portion of it is. That particular lot, I remember checking it out. I think it was like almost parceled out and excluded. But parts of
Really?
Mountain are, parts of Highland are, not all of it is. And you have to remember, it has to be surveyed. It's not just,
right.
just that it's identified as a potential historic district in the plan. I believe it has to be surveyed.
Right, and that's a good segue into the next topic, which is the next upcoming grant application, which I believe is due January 21st. Correct, Tommy? January 21st?
That's correct.
Okay, so we just wanted to get some ideas of what people think would be a good grant project. So this sounds as though Upper Mountain Avenue, I mean, it does have, what is that called?
I'm looking at the map that Tommy has up here.
Right.
This is,
I guess I need to look at it more
is
closely.
this grant only available for reviewing a potential historic residential district?
No, we got, but the grant, it's the same grant that we got to produce the residential historic design guidelines.
So,
It's surveying a potential district.
well,
No, we could do that, or the other thing that Steve and I talked about would be to identify some of the, not the locally individual landmarks, but some of the landmarks that are on the state and national register that are not local landmarks and need local landmark in order to get any protection.
Right.
So that's also, we could identify maybe 8 or 10.
well, what about, may I ask, what about the design guidelines for the commercial districts?
I think we already have that.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's something that we felt very strongly about putting forth, and I personally feel is an urgent priority.
Wait, what are the historic design guidelines that we did a couple of years ago?
No, that's just, those were very, very, very perfunctory, very simplified.
Okay,
We actually had a meeting. and
David, you're talking about design guidelines for specific districts?
For the
Commercial districts.
we could break it down into separate districts and say the Bloomfield Avenue Commercial District, the Downtown Commercial District, and make that exclusively, or the Watchung District, et cetera. But I do think that that's a very urgent need, and certainly deserves our dedicated attention.
because yeah, we had a grant, we did the commercial design guidelines in 2016. What you're saying is you don't think that, you're not satisfied with that, with the quality of that document.
No, if I'm not mistaken, when we reviewed the master plan, there was a very serious conversation about the urgent need in the master commercial district.
Because I'm confused, because I thought that's document historic design guidelines focuses on the commercial districts.
It does.
It does.
It's not, like David said, I think it's just rather rudimentary.
Okay.
But it's very rudimentary. Yeah.
That's what
It just needs to be upgraded.
I had talked very at great length with, I talked to all of us about how when we did the Seymour Street project, that hold on a second. Ira Smith did a wonderful job doing a evaluation of the whole Bloomfield Avenue corridor for design guidelines for the entire Bloomfield Avenue Commercial District. And I felt when I compared it to what we had in our current commercial design guidelines, I felt they were woefully insufficient. So I had put forth the idea of addressing that and incorporating and working, leveraging Ira's great work that he had put together and building upon it.
So perhaps the town center historic district design guidelines, and then maybe design guidelines for some of the neighborhood commercial districts would be a separate project. Because we get funding every year, about 25,000 or so.
I would say Bloomfield Avenue would probably be the priority, and that might include also the extension of the Bloomfield Avenue Historic District further west. I don't know if that can be included, but I think there's a lot of things that we have learned in the last couple of years, of things that are good and things that aren't so good. And I think we need to draw from our experience and really attack that.
Okay, so why don't we, David, if you could write something down and send it to either Steve or I, and I think we'll put together a couple of ideas. And we do have to make a decision so that we can So working with Tommy, he can formulate something that will go to the state by January 21st.
Yeah.
Okay,
I would think that you need to make a decision in the next 2 weeks.
right,
So that we have the time to prepare the grant application, because there's a lot of work that goes into that grant application.
I have actually written something up. It was proposed as section 7 of the master plan in historic preservation, so I can bring that to your attention.
great.
And also perhaps attach the Ira Smith presentation as a representation.
Okay, great. Do that.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Why don't we move on to the meeting?
I think Watchung Avenue and the Upper Montclair Historic Districts in the future could probably be done under one application.
Yeah,
Just
I agree.
because there's enough homogeneity of scale that it would be redundant to do it separately.
Or they're small enough that you could have, 2 components of one
Yes.
document.
Yes.
So I agree. But we have to, make a decision fairly quickly so that we have time to gather the information.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to adopting the 2022 meeting calendar. All those in favor of going to the third Thursday?
No. Hey, Kathleen, I just kind of went through the calendar and grabbed the dates just to make it clear. So I was thinking January 13th, February 10, March 10, April 14, May 12, June 9, July 14, August 11, September 15, October 13, November 17, December 15. And I can run through that again, but
Are those generally?
that way it's clear.
Those are the second Thursdays.
Is that the second Thursday?
That's the second, for the most part. Some of them where it's, a short week the first week, it might be the third, but it generally the middle of the month is what I was.
Have you had a chance to make sure that it doesn't fall on any holidays?
I didn't look like it when I
I can look at it
on my
tomorrow.
calendar.
But we need to adopt it tonight because we need. Let's adopt it tonight, and if we have to make any changes, we can we can amend it at the next meeting.
Okay.
I'm gonna check for holidays right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't we wait a minute if you can do that, and then we.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I apologize. I just had a call come in. I don't know if that hurt. If you heard that.
I heard ring.
And I think the intent is to continue with the online meeting, the remote meetings.
Okay.
I know the council's continuing, the planning board and the zoning board are. I think it's the safest way to operate, and I think we've been able to do it pretty successfully. So,
I think it's great.
yeah. So we'll add some language to correct the calendar that we will be meeting remotely until the state of emergency, until we're told we can no longer do that.
Okay.
I didn't see any holidays on those dates that Mr. Hinman put out.
You don't see any?
I didn't see any
No
holidays.
conflicts. Okay.
Okay, great. So can you read those dates again?
Sure.
Did you write them? Did you have them, Tommy?
I have them.
Okay.
So I'll just read it again so it's clear for everyone. January 13th, February 10th, March 10th, April 14th, May 12th, June 9th, July 14th, August 11th, September 15th, October 13th, November 17th, December 15th.
Okay.
Okay, that works. We have a motion to adopt the schedule for the meeting dates for 2022 as amended at this meeting.
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then Tommy, you'll write something and send it out to us with the new dates so we can have it in our files, please.
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
Okay,
It'll be
great.
posted too.
Okay.
Yes.
We have no certificate or resolutions. Is there any other business we have to discuss for year end?
No, we'll be doing the reorganization in January, so, just prepare for that.
On January 13th.
Okay.
And
So-
Janice, real quick, I think my term is up at the end of this year.
You know,
Is the clerk?
you're not the only one. We've sent the mayor
Okay.
a memo about all of the appointments and reappointments and vacancies to the HPC that have to get
Okay.
addressed. That's
Okay.
all I can say.
Okay, well, we're hoping to see everybody in January.
Yes.
Okay.
Have a wonderful holiday.
Yes,
Happy
everyone.
holiday.
Everybody have a great holiday.
Have Merry
Safe
Christmas.
and
So
healthy.
Merry Christmas. Okay.
we have a
Happy New
motion
Year.
to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks
Thanks
for
to
all your work,
everybody.
guys. Have
Thank
fun.
you.
All right,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.